Master these 7 Stoic principles in 6 months and 2026 will be your best year. If you walk into 2026 still giving your peace of mind to people who don't deserve it, still reacting instead of responding, still making yourself small to make others comfortable, then nothing will change. You'll be sitting here next December wondering why another year passed without transformation. But what if I told you that 2,000 years ago, the Stoics figured out exactly how to break this cycle? What if the next 6 months could genuinely reshape your entire life, not through motivation that fades by February, but through principles that actually rewire how you see yourself and the world around you? Stay with me, because what I'm about to share isn't theory. It's a practical framework that has survived millennia because it works. Let me start by explaining the core insight that everything else builds upon. The Stoics discovered that human suffering doesn't come from external events themselves, but from our judgments about those events. Now, I know you've probably heard something like this before and thought it sounded nice, but wondered how it actually helps when your boss criticizes you unfairly, or when someone you trusted betrays you. Here's where the Stoics were brilliant in their specificity. They didn't say that bad things don't happen or that pain isn't real. They said that between the event and your suffering, there's a middle step that you control, and most people never even notice it exists. Think of it this way. When someone cuts you off in traffic, the event is just metal and rubber moving through space. The event doesn't arrive at your door carrying anger with it. You interpret the event, you assign meaning to it. You decide that it represents disrespect or that the other driver thinks you're insignificant. And then based on that interpretation, you generate the anger. Marcus Aurelius, who was literally the emperor of Rome, wrote in his private journal that if you're distressed by anything external, the pain isn't due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and you have the power to revoke that estimate at any moment. This is radical because it means your emotional state is entirely within your domain, once you understand this mechanism. So the first practice for the next 6 months is learning to find that gap between what happens to you and how you respond. In that space lives all your power, all your freedom, all your dignity. When someone says something that would normally trigger you, instead of letting words fly out of your mouth on autopilot, insert a pause. Even 3 seconds changes everything. In those 3 seconds, you can ask yourself a Stoic question that Epictetus taught. Is this within my control or outside my control? The comment someone made is outside your control. It already happened. But your response is entirely within your control. Here's what this looks like practically. Your colleague takes credit for your work in a meeting. The immediate impulse is to react, to call them out right there, to let everyone know they're a fraud. But what does that reaction serve? It might feel satisfying for 30 seconds, but then you've created an enemy, you've made yourself look petty in front of leadership, and you've let this person dictate your behavior. The Stoic pause gives you time to choose a response that actually serves your interests. Maybe you calmly clarify your role after the meeting. Maybe you document everything and let the pattern of their dishonesty reveal itself over time. Maybe you realize this workplace doesn't align with your values, and you begin planning an exit strategy. All of these are responses rather than reactions, and they come from power rather than from being controlled by circumstances. The second principle that will transform your 2026 is this: abandon the project of trying to please everyone. Marcus Aurelius knew that even with absolute power over the Roman Empire, he couldn't make everyone like him. He wrote that if you seek the approval of all people, you've lost yourself. And here's why this matters more than it sounds. Every hour you spend contorting yourself to win approval from people who aren't even paying attention is an hour stolen from building something real. The qualities that make one person admire you will make another person resent you. Your confidence looks like arrogance to someone who's insecure. Your boundaries feel like coldness to someone who has none. Your success triggers envy in people who haven't done their own work. The Stoic solution is to identify what they called living according to nature and reason. You develop your own internal standard based on virtue, on what you genuinely believe is right and good, and you measure yourself against that standard rather than against the constantly shifting opinions of the crowd. This doesn't mean you ignore all feedback or become arrogant. It means you carefully consider whose opinions actually matter, because they come from people whose judgment you respect and whose values align with yours. Everyone else's approval becomes background noise that you can acknowledge without being controlled by it. In practical terms, over the next 6 months, notice when you're about to say yes to something you don't want to do because you're afraid of disappointing someone. Notice when you're about to suppress your actual opinion because it might not be popular. In those moments, ask yourself the Stoic question: am I acting from virtue and reason right now, or am I acting from fear of disapproval? That question alone will redirect hundreds of small decisions that collectively determine the quality of your life. The third principle is about seeing people clearly without the distorting lens of wishful thinking. The Stoics emphasized objective perception of reality, and nowhere is this more important than in relationships. We create elaborate fantasies about who people are based on who we need them to be, and then we suffer when reality contradicts our fantasy. If someone has shown you through repeated actions that they only appear when they need something from you, believing their promises about changing is not optimism. It's self-deception, and self-deception is a violation of Stoic principles because it means you're choosing comfortable illusion over uncomfortable truth. Seneca wrote about this beautifully. He said we should examine our friendships and associations with clear eyes, asking whether these connections promote virtue and mutual growth, or whether they're unbalanced arrangements that drain our energy without providing genuine companionship. Now, this is where most people misunderstand Stoicism and think it's cold or unfeeling. The Stoics weren't saying don't love people or don't care about relationships. They were saying love people as they actually are, not as you wish they were, because only then can you make wise decisions about how much of your precious, irreplaceable time and energy to invest. Here's your practice for the next 6 months. When someone disappoints you or violates a boundary, instead of immediately explaining it away or blaming yourself, treat it as data about reality. If it happens once, it's an incident. If it's a pattern, it's information about their character and capacity. The Stoics taught that disappointment is actually useful because it reveals true character. People show who they really are when they can't use you anymore or when you stop accommodating their convenience. Pay attention to that information and adjust your expectations and investments accordingly. This isn't pessimism, it's wisdom. The fourth principle ties everything together. Your attention and time are the building blocks of your future reality. Seneca observed that we're incredibly protective of our money and possessions. If someone tried to take even a small amount, we'd defend it vigorously. Yet we allow people to waste our time carelessly, even though time is the one resource we can never recover. Every moment you spend exists only once. You're trading a piece of your life for whatever receives your attention in that moment. The Stoics understood that where your attention goes consistently, reality follows. If you keep directing your focus toward people who have demonstrated they won't honor your time, you're actively constructing a future filled with the same frustrations. If you keep rehearsing past grievances in your mind, you're building a present saturated with bitterness. But if you consciously direct your attention toward what you can control, toward virtue, toward relationships that are reciprocal, toward skills and knowledge that compound over time, you're building a completely different future. For the next 6 months, I want you to become almost ruthlessly aware of where your attention goes. When you find yourself scrolling through someone's social media who makes you feel inadequate, or replaying an argument from 3 years ago, or explaining yourself to someone who's already decided not to understand you, recognize that you're spending your life force on things that don't serve your growth. The Stoic practice is to redirect that attention immediately to something within your control that builds the life you actually want. So here's what I want you to do right now. Don't wait until January 1st when motivation is high but understanding is shallow. Start today with one of these 4 principles. Pick the one that resonated most strongly with you. Maybe it's inserting that pause before you react. Maybe it's saying no to something you don't want to do just because someone expects you to say yes. Maybe it's looking honestly at a relationship that's been draining you and finally admitting what you've known for months. Maybe it's redirecting your attention from something that depletes you to something that builds you. Leave a comment right now telling me which principle you're starting with and why. This act of declaring it publicly increases your commitment exponentially. Subscribe to this channel because we're going deep into Stoic wisdom every single week, and these aren't abstract philosophical discussions. This is practical knowledge for actually living better. And if this video gave you a new perspective, share it with someone who needs to hear this message. 6 months from now, when 2026 is fully underway, you'll either look back at this moment as when everything changed, or you'll wish you had taken it seriously. The choice, as the Stoics always reminded us, is entirely yours.